that's what I wanted to do. My first day of not working anymore, I want to make a YouTube video. And hopefully my cat will stop disturbing the camera. Buddy, really? Seriously? Excuse me for just a second. Whew, and I'm back. So today is my first day not having a job. I am no longer employed. I am unemployed. It's wonderful. Everybody was asking me, what are you going to do? Where are you going to go to work now that you're not working here anymore? And it was like, I'm going to go home and I'm going to get my shit together. That's my whole goal. I want to quit my job just so that I can go home and get my shit together, because I have a load of shit that I have not been keeping on top of, and I feel very guilty for it. One of the things that I have not been keeping on top of, I haven't been doing book reviews, and I've been hating it because it's like the last couple times I tried, I was working full time, I was really tired. I'd come in, I'd spend what little time I could with my kids, and then after that I'd try to piece together the energy and the mental, like, cognitive abilities to do a book review, and I'd be sitting there holding the book and thinking, my brain feels like it is mush right now. And so today is my first day. I'm free. I have some time. I got sleep. I slept last night. It was amazing. Sleep is just so good. I love sleep. I haven't had much of it, and so getting some felt really amazing. Let's get into the next chapter of this book, and hopefully I won't be quite so zoned out this time, which would be really cool. We are on the second part of the book. He's got, like, part one, we got through. Part two, we are now on, and that is the Bright Triad. And the first thing he talks about is the Dark Triad. If you're not familiar with the Dark Triad, it's all the really destructive, the most destructive traits that we see in people's personalities. And he goes into it briefly. For people who aren't familiar, it's narcissism, Machiavellianism, which is not as often talked about, and psychopathy, which people have all sorts of ideas about what that is. I've known a lot of people who have Dark Triad traits. I actually spent a lot of time reading up on the Dark Triad because I have in my life befriended many people who had Dark Triad traits. Not all of them were men. One of them was a woman. She was the scariest of the group, honestly. She was the most psychopathic and the most destructive of the lot. And you never guess it because she was this sweet little girl, and she was just so nice. She was awful. She was a horrible, horrible human being. She was scary. I did have a boyfriend who, I'm assuming he was primarily narcissistic, but he had some interesting kind of, it tends to blur together. So he finally got caught doing something illegal, which normally when he did illegal things, he was pretty good at sweet talking his way out of it because he had, like, no sense of conscience. Like, he could lie about anything and he didn't feel bad about it. He'd hurt people around him and he didn't feel bad about it. Like, it just never quite clicked into place for him. Fascinating human being. Really horrible person, but fascinating. The way he interacted with the world around him was really, it was interesting. Yes, I was physically harmed as a result of my interactions with him. Pretty badly. I got raped. It wasn't good. I know that a lot of guys have this idea that women are attracted to Dark Triad traits. That's probably, if you're in the manosphere and you have heard about the Dark Triad, you've probably heard about it in that context. Oh, women are attracted to Dark Triad traits. Women are attracted to assholes and bad guys. Not as clear-cut as you would think. Me personally, I was a little fucked in the head, and one of the things I liked about people who exhibited Dark Triad traits is the things about me that were pathological didn't ring alarm bells for them. And so I remember there were several times I'd be hanging out with people who were, there was one guy I think of in particular, like right off the bat, like he was very Machiavellian. And I'd hang out with him and we got along great because he didn't find anything about me unnerving. There was nothing about me that rang alarm bells for him, and so it was like I could really relax and just let myself go and hang out with him and be myself, and he didn't care, and that was really nice for me. Now that I'm older and now that I've had a lot of therapy, I can say the thing that was ringing all the alarm bells for other people is the fact that I tend to be very manic and I tend to be very high energy. I get restless very quickly. One of the things about sociopaths is they tend to get restless very quickly. They just don't handle it the way I do. I tend to be very creative when I'm restless. Like, I get restless and it's like, okay, I gotta go build something. I gotta go do something. I gotta go exercise. That's manic. That's very manic. And I'm a very manic person. For a sociopath, it's usually, I'm restless, I don't know how to handle this, and so I want to just break something. I'm going to destroy something. I'm going to light something on fire and see what happens when it burns down. Figuratively, not necessarily literally, although, I mean, I guess some people literally, there's arsony in the world. Anyway, that wasn't me, but I tended to mesh well with those kinds of people because it's like, we were always bored. And the fact that I was just really explosive and really high energy just didn't cause a problem for other people. So I found myself frequently hanging out with dark triad people. I know in the manosphere there's a tendency to always put everything into a male-female category. It's like, oh, well, you're a woman, so you like dark triad people. So that's just, you're naturally going to do that because you're a woman. I've got a lot of issues with that. I need to talk about that, but that's not a subject for today. In the meantime, no, I had some issues and I got along well with dark triad people a lot. And so I hung out with like a guy who was a murderer at one point. I hung out with another guy who went to prison for whipping out a pistol and beating somebody over the head until his skull cracked and his eyeball popped out. I hung out with a guy who was a compulsive liar, obviously. And then of course there was that girl who I found extraordinarily attractive because she and I were bored and we tended to handle restlessness together, and it was really awesome. And she was straight up evil, man. She was scary as fuck. So dark triad is bad. Stay away from those people. They're not good people. Bright triad is a term that I think Dr. Smith invented. I think he invented it for this book, but it's brilliant. There's so many manosphere gurus out there in the world who are like, well, here's a list of 99 traits in women that you need to avoid because they're bad and they're red flags. And that's good and all, but it doesn't really help you find traits that you should look for in women. Like, if you want to hang out with women, like, after reading through trait, 87 of 99, you've ruled out 99.9% of women in this world. And so then it's like, well, can you find a good woman? No, they don't exist. Well, yeah, after reading that list, they don't exist, but that doesn't necessarily mean there aren't any good women. It just means that you've slowly excluded all women by having this very lengthy and detailed list of things that you just can't deal with. And women do that too. Like, women with their big long lists of, well, my ideal man has to like dogs because I like dogs, and he has to like purebreds because I like purebreds, and his purebreds can't be better than my purebreds, and he also has to like baking because I like baking, and he has to be tall, and he has to have the perfect hair. Like, this person does not exist. So instead, let's be a little more realistic. What are some green flags to look for? Instead of saying, hey, all these red flags need to be avoided like the plague, what are green flags and what do they look like? So he's broken this section of the book into 3 segments, 3 chapters. The first chapter is clarity, and he's got clarity, maturity, and stability. We're going to be talking about clarity today, and that's really exciting. Like, I'm curious, like, what are green flags in women? What should you look for in women? What is a good woman? Like, I'd love to be a good woman. I'd love to, kind of take some tips and pointers on how to be a better woman. I'm married. I want to be a good wife for my husband. What does he have to say? This is interesting. Dozens of men have told me they feel verbally outmatched by the women in their lives. By comparison, only one woman has told me she feels verbally outmatched by her man. These guys find themselves lost and defeated in conversations like the one above. Most of them assume they're just not very good at expressing themselves, and some of them are partially correct. But here's the thing. If their women were truly skilled communicators, these men would not walk away from interactions feeling bewildered and defeated. That's a very interesting point. Women tend to gravitate toward linguistic skills. Men tend not to gravitate toward linguistic skills. There's this whole argument about men being smarter than women. I see it on the manosphere all the time. I want to make a video about it someday. Today is not that day. But... And then, because I am very easily sidetracked, I spent the next several minutes talking about the differences in male and female intelligence. One day I'll learn. So when it comes to linguistic intelligence, Shakespeare, men, Men have the best linguistic intelligence. Yes, the guys on the fringes, they really do. As for the common or garden everyday average Joe versus the common or garden everyday average Jane, Jane's probably going to be a little bit more linguistically skilled. Women just tend to be a little bit more linguistic. Men tend to be not as linguistic, but they tend to excel in other areas, so mathematics, things like that. Which is why everybody's like constantly going, hey, we need to get women into STEM because women need to be in STEM. I think they think that that's some sort of social construct. Actually, it's just the way we think. Now, how much of that is socially constructed? I don't know. Maybe women aren't taught to think mathematically growing up. Personally, I just wasn't any good at it, and I didn't like it, and I wasn't interested in it. Men tend to be very interested in it, just very organically. Men want that. So naturally, feminism, they want to switch everything up and change everything around, and it's really annoying. Doesn't mean you're not going to find women who are not good at that. There are outliers in any group. But your common or garden average woman versus your common or garden average man, women are going to be more linguistically talented. Men are probably going to be a little bit better at math. It's just those stereotypes exist for a reason. So when he says, well, women are linguistically going to be outmatching their male partners, yes, women are going to linguistically outmatch their male partners. That doesn't mean that they're better at communicating. They think they are, but that's not necessarily a guaranteed thing. And that's something that women really need to be aware of, and something that I think it's really good to bring attention to. Just because you have linguistic skills, that doesn't mean that you're using your linguistic skills in a productive way. Congratulations, you use words well. What are you using those words to actually accomplish? And if you're not accomplishing anything with it, then it's kind of a waste of time and effort. Women have this tendency that I have encountered, not all women, but some, to think that talking a lot and feeling feelings and communicating all the time is somehow meaningful. And then they communicate emptily quite a bit. I remember being really annoyed when I was young because it seemed like everybody was talking a lot and nobody was actually saying anything. Substance is important. The substance that you communicate with your partner is important. Communicating meaningfully is important. Talking endlessly without actually getting anywhere is still a waste of time. In this chapter, we look beneath the surface for the signs of a woman's true ability to express herself, focusing on 3 traits that lead to clarity, the first pillar of the Bright Triad. These are reliability, inquisitiveness, assertiveness. He's broken down the first section of the Bright Triad into 3 subsections, the first of those being reliability. Solid communication skills are like a dependable truck. They don't need to be sleek and shiny, they just need to be reliable. Going back to what he was saying about words and having verbal ability, sleek and shiny is having a lot of words. Sleek and shiny is being able to use words really, really well. It doesn't mean that you're using them effectively. It doesn't mean that you're communicating well. It's just that you got a lot of sleek, shiny words. What you need is reliable words. And so he goes in with reliability. Anyone can communicate well when the skies are blue. Clear, calm communication matters most during the stormy moments. If her skills are unreliable, she may revert to more primitive means of expressing herself, such as tantrums and passive aggressiveness. Good relationship risk management requires a partner who can express herself constructively, not perfectly, during times of stress. I appreciate that he leaves some wiggle room for this because, I've been in arguments with my husband. We've been married for over a decade. You get into these moments where you're stressed out, something bad's happened, you're in a bad mood, things are not going well, and it's really easy to just snap at the other person and say something mean or harsh or hard. And everybody has that tendency to react negatively. There are different types of negative reactions, but everybody has a tendency to react poorly when they're stressed out and they're angry. And so you're not going to hit the mark every single time. Occasionally you're going to say something and then look back at it and be like, well, that was a really stupid thing to say. Or, well, I was really being an asshole there, and I'm sorry. You have those moments in any relationship with any person. And the important thing is to try and hit the mark, to try and improve how you communicate, to try and minimize the number of times that you have those moments of just blowing up at the other person and being angry. And some people are better at it than others. My husband is amazingly good at communicating. I don't know if I have the linguistic edge on him or not. I probably do, simply because I habitually novel write, and so I have a tendency to get the words perfectly accurately. He's much quicker on his feet than I am, though, so when it comes to saying words quickly and using the correct words quickly, I have a brain to mouth disconnect. I can write them down very quickly. I can't speak them as quickly. He's very witty. I am not. And so it's interesting. He's actually, I would say, a far better communicator than I am, because he's able to maintain his calm even in stressful situations. I tend to lose it a little bit. I say that I have a short fuse where it gets burnt down very quickly, and then I just blow up all over the place, and then afterwards I'm perfectly calm, and it's like, okay, I had my blow up moment. I'm calmed down now. Sorry about that. He tends to have a very, very long fuse, and so he stays calm, he stays calm, he stays calm. I've really only seen him really angry a couple times in the decade that we have been married. And so his fuse is much longer than mine. But once you've burned it down that far, it's kind of like, okay, well, this is pretty extreme circumstances. So people are different. People have different fuses. People have different stressors. People have different reactions to stress. Communicating effectively is not being perfect. Communicating effectively is learning how to work past and manage your imperfections and do the very best that you can. And to understand what doing a good job is, and to try to strive toward that goal. And so I love that he's got this little, like, in parentheses, not perfectly. Nobody's perfect. Everybody makes mistakes. Do the best you can. He went on to tell this really beautiful story to illustrate his point. It was really interesting. There was a woman with some really bad communication skills, and he talks about how she started working to improve her communication skills because they went to couples counseling, which is how he met them. And yeah, the husband made some mistakes, and the woman just really didn't react well to them. And it kind of started to come to the surface, like, her communication skills are not great in this area. She has a tendency to, when she's displeased, when she's upset, she just kind of stops being a good communicator. I'm not gonna give away the story because I'm really hoping you guys buy this book. No, I'm not being paid to promote it, but I think it's a really good book. But I mean, it was an interesting story, and I really liked the fact that it wasn't one of those, okay, the woman just screwed up and the couple is doomed. She screwed up, they went into therapy, she realized that she was screwing up, she started working to change her communication style, which is what any person should do. It's not a healthy person who sits there and says, well, I'm a bad communicator, so I guess that's just it. I better just be dysfunctional for the rest of my life, and you're just going to have to either deal with me or move on to someone else. That's not healthy. That is bad. You shouldn't do that. If you have problems with things like communication, it's important to start working on those things and improving them. And so, he tells this story where the woman actually did that, which is good. That's important. People should do that. The next trait is inquisitiveness. And he starts off with, immediately just dives into this story. And it's a couple was arguing. He said he had simply forgotten because he was overwhelmed at work. This is where most couples go wildly off track. She could have taken his statement as a lame excuse, or focused on the dog's well-being, he missed a veterinary appointment, or complained that putting work first meant he didn't really love her. Any one of those responses, or a dozen others, would have put him on the defensive, and they could easily have spent the next hour in a pointless quarrel. This woman responded in an entirely different manner. She got curious. She knew that neglecting responsibilities wasn't in his true nature, so she asked questions rather than blindly acting from her own hurt feelings. She truly wanted to understand what was going on with him. Her response to his claim that he had forgotten was, "I don't get it." She listened patiently while he explained the demanding events at work of the previous few days. She recognized that any reasonable person might have forgotten the dog under those circumstances. They made up and moved on to more important matters. This is beautiful. I love the fact that he's, like, in the first couple chapters, he had these couples and these stories that he told where the couples were kind of doomed. Like, it was just not working out. And I don't think any of those couples actually made it. Like, I think they ended up falling apart. Here we have the first couple in this chapter is the woman's making mistakes, she's screwing up, and it kind of comes out in therapy that she's kind of the root of the problem, and she starts making steps to correct it, which is important. And in this one, he shows the woman who is communicating effectively. Miscommunication is part of communication. It happens all the time. Sooner or later, in any couple, in any group, with any other person, in any relationship, you are going to have some kind of miscommunication. You're going to have some point where communication broke down and you got into an argument. Something happened, someone was upset, and you had a fight, had an argument, had a disagreement. That is part of being in a relationship with any other human being. It doesn't mean you just turn around, walk away, and abandon the relationship. It's not a failed attempt. It's not doomed to failure if you have miscommunication. That's just very normal. It's what you do about the miscommunication when it happens that makes all of the difference. And so in this story that he tells, there's a miscommunication. The woman's upset with the man. The man offers her his explanation for how this situation occurred, and she listens to him. She takes the time to think about what he's saying. She asks questions to clarify what's going on. It's very difficult to do that. It's very important to do that. And so I love the fact that he tells a story where the woman isn't just the default bad guy. I think that's important. Not because I'm a woman and I'm on Team Woman, but because I've been noticing, and I really want to make a video about this in the near future, the manosphere doesn't have a positive understanding of women. And I'm trying to put these ideas into words, but basically, if you can't look at someone objectively, or a group of people objectively, and be aware of any of their positive traits in the process of observing their negative traits, you're not being objective. You're not seeing that person or group of people in a clear or accurate manner. If all you can see is the negative in a person or group of people, you're not seeing them correctly or realistically. You are missing important facts, important details, important information. It's skipping. It's missing you. You're not getting it. The manosphere has this very alarming tendency to see all women as bad, all femininity is bad, all feminine traits as bad, therefore women are just bad. Which, I mean, if you want to sit around and be angry and resentful all day, yeah, that's a great way to do it. You're going to sit around being angry and resentful all day. You're not going to achieve anything. You're not going to see any kind of improvement in any area of your life if you do that. It doesn't make anything better, ever, to sit around and be angry and resentful. And you are missing valuable information because you are not being objective. So, really happy that he put this in here. It's like, oh, look, it's a woman who isn't the bad guy. He's being objective. This is an indication of human objectiveness. This is important. This is important. Minor detail, but very important. Inquisitiveness is a highly underrated and under-discussed skill. In life, it's the foundation of wisdom. In couples, it's the fuel of efficient and peaceful conversations. It cuts through half-baked fears and insecurities, just like it did with the couple arguing over the dog. Yeah, that's it. That's it. You have to be willing to listen to the other person. You have to be willing to try and understand where they're coming from. You have to be willing to ask them questions to further clarify, what was it that they just said? I don't necessarily understand. I'm not sure that I'm understanding correctly what it is that they're trying to say. If you can't do that, you're going to have problems. And this is a trait that's good for men or women. Which I was thinking to myself as I'm reading it, and then I get down to the next paragraph, and it's probably obvious, but inquisitiveness works best when it goes both ways. If you're not curious about what's going on in her head, then get curious. She'll dig it. Yeah. You want to be curious about the other person. And one of the things I've been reading about lately, because I always find it very fascinating, is limerence. And limerence is the point of infatuation. Infatuation is kind of an annoying word because it comes from the Latin meaning to be stupid about something. And love does make you very stupid. Early stages of love, limerence, makes you very stupid, but it's very annoying to say, well, I'm just infatuated with somebody, because nobody takes infatuation seriously. Any long-lasting relationship starts with at least a little bit of infatuation. And so they call it limerence, this moment of just beautiful euphoria that you get when you're attracted to someone and you like them in a romantic way. I find limerence fascinating because I've dipped into limerence, and when it hits me, it just hits me hard. And of course, when I met my husband, we were best friends for like a month, and then all of a sudden we were dating and we're talking about getting married and how many kids we want to have. It was, I guess, by most people's understanding, a whirlwind romance. I think with our first date, we were already ready to go and just elope that night. If there had been a chapel open and we had felt that we could get away with it, we probably would have just snuck over there and been like, okay, we went on our first date, we're ready to get married now. And I think we would have held it together too, because we made it work. We did take that 2 years to really weigh each other and get to know each other before combining our finances and getting really, really, legally entangled with one another, because that's just smart. But when I fall in love very, very, very hard and to a very extreme degree, and it's really unsettling to me. Like, I don't find many people attractive, actually. I just, occasionally somebody comes along and it hits me between the eyes and it's like, well, I guess I'm in love now. This is very uncomfortable. And because it happens so seldom, I really haven't had a chance to get used to it. So I find limerence absolutely fascinating. During limerence, during the early stages of falling in love with someone, you want to know everything about them. And I meet I tend to be a very curious person, so I want to know everything about everybody I meet. So if I've talked to you a lot and I've asked you a lot of questions about your life, don't worry, I do that with everybody. It's okay, I'm not secretly in love with you. I have to put that caveat out. But no, when you meet someone, for example, when I met my husband, who I fell in love with, I wanted to know everything about him. I wanted to spend every single waking minute talking to him, thinking about him, learning everything there was to learn about him. And he wanted the same with me. It was a shared limerence, and so we were both just, I want to know everything about you. You're fascinating. Holding on to a little bit of that is really good for relationships. You meet someone that you want to stay in a long-term relationship with, ask about them, learn about them. What are you thinking? What's going on in your life? Very handy, very useful for a relationship. I'm doing that with him right now. Like, I'm asking, like, tell me what's going on in your head. Tell me what you learned about. Tell me what you saw. That's actually one of the things I was telling one of my friends yesterday during my last day of work. I was like, okay, so this is something that I'm trying to make a habit of, because I think it's important. When I'm talking with somebody and I want to, have a conversation with them, I ask them, what have you learned recently? Because a lot of my friends tend to be very high in openness, so they're learning lots of new and interesting things. I tend to be kind of high in openness, so I enjoy learning new and interesting things, and it automatically opens up the gateway for us to have a conversation on something that they're interested in because they learned it just recently, and so it was interesting enough for them to take the time to learn it. And I can be interested and just right away get sucked into the subject and learn about this thing that they learned about, that's new to me, that they're already kind of interested and excited about, because I'm a manic person. I also just feed off of human excitement. And so I'm trying to do that with people in my life. Like, I try to do that with people around me, like my friends. I go to them, it's like, what's something interesting that you've learned lately? And I have some people they spend a lot of time learning stuff, so it's like, please tell me something that's exciting to you. This is fun. It's fun. And it's also very good for relationships. So, cool. Assertiveness. I'm really bad at this one. Like, the moment I started reading about it, it was like, oh, I'm really bad at this. I'm really bad at this. I really am. I'm horrible at assertiveness. And he mentions, and he's not wrong, a lot of women are not taught to be assertive. You can say that that's a feminist thing. Like, the feminists are always railing about, oh, women aren't taught to be assertive. Women aren't trained to be assertive. Women are not assertive. And I am extraordinarily bad at being assertive because I was not just socially trained to be female in our society, where it's like, well, don't be assertive, that's bad. You should act like a girl. You should act feminine. You should act passive. But then on top of that, I was also a neglected child. So then it was like I was in situations that were physically dangerous and occasionally life-threatening, and Don't you assert yourself now. Don't you stand up for yourself. Don't you stand up for your well-being. You sit in that situation where you are in physical danger and you deal with it quietly, submissively, and without complaint, because that's the way the world works. Well, you take a person like that and you stick them into adulthood and suddenly it's like, do you know how to be assertive for yourself? No, I suck at it. I'm really bad at it. And so when I read this, I was like, oh, I'm not good at this. I'm really not good at this. And so here's why it's important to be assertive. Because, like, it's very easy for guys in the manosphere to be like, well, why should a woman be assertive? I'm the man. I should be taking charge. I should be the lead. I should have her in my frame, right? Here's why you want a woman who's at least a little bit assertive. People who squash their own desires to serve others eventually begin to feel they're being used and mistreated. Assertiveness is tricky for a lot of women. Even in today's enlightened environment, women often feel that it's selfish to assert their desires. If someone believes in a false dichotomy between selfishness and silent suffering, it's easy to opt for the polite option and overlook the long-term cost. And you see that, actually, in No More Mr. Nice Guy. No More Mr. Nice Guy, the guy thinks he's being a good guy and a nice guy, and he's being a doormat. And then he's sitting there feeling resentful because he's been a doormat for so long, but it's like, you put yourself in a position where other people were using you. In No More Mr. Nice Guy, it's all about the unspoken contract, the unnegotiated contract. So the guy, he comes in and he does all these nice things for the girl, and he thinks that she's going to naturally fall into his invisible contract, his silent secret contract of, I did these nice things for you, so now you owe me sex. Well, she's never heard this contract. She's never discussed with him any kind of, well, I'll give you sex for all this nice stuff you're doing. So she just sits there and thinks, wow, he's being so nice. That's really nice. I'm busy with my own life, and this person came into my life and did these nice things for me. That's a very nice thing. And sometimes people are just nice. So that's not really an indicator that he feels he's owed sex. Some guys are just nice, naturally. But the nice guy in No More Mr. Nice Guy, he's following this contract and he expects her to pay up at the end of it. But he never negotiated with her. So at the end of it, when he's like, hey, let's have some sex, she's like, why? And he's like, well, I did all this nice stuff for you. And she's like, so? And he's like, well, you owe me. And she's like, you're a creep, get away from me. Because that's the natural reaction that any human being would have if someone comes to them out of the blue and says, hey, you owe me. No, I don't, and I won't. So there. Women have a similar pattern. A lot of women, not all women. Do I fall into this pattern a little bit? More than I'd like to, yes. We bend our lives around men. We bend our lives around other people. It's a great trait for when you have small children. And this is where I see it most often in myself. I have seen it in my relationship with my husband with the brain tumor and all the problems he had, where I began to feel a certain sense of resentment for him because it was like, you know, you've got these issues. We don't know what they are because we didn't know it was a brain tumor. They went on for 5 to 7 years without getting fixed. We thought it was stress because he was overworked. We thought it was stress and sleep deprivation and fatigue. And so it was like, well, you know, we're having all these issues. That's probably what it is. But it was really wearing down on our relationship because 5 to 7 years of relationship stress is not good. But also with children. Children will do it where it's like, children have needs. They're needy little creatures. Babies have needs. Babies are incredibly needy creatures. It's like, all the damn time. They need your attention. They need you to feed them. They need you to clean their dirty diapers. They need this. They need that. And so it's very easy, and mothers complain about this, and they have perfectly legitimate reasons to complain about this. I haven't slept. I haven't eaten. I haven't bathed. I feel dirty and disgusting, and I'm tired, and I'm hungry. But I have to take care of this baby. Women complain about that because it's exhausting. And it's legitimately an exhausting part of having offspring and producing offspring. The woman who fails to take care of her offspring has dead offspring. It's very important for women to be willing to sacrifice their own immediate needs in order to care for something as precious and resource intensive as an infant, as a small unit of offspring. But if you do that to too extreme of a degree, like, I don't think there's an off switch on women with that, because, if you have multiple offspring, well, then you're suspending your needs for one offspring unit, and then there's the other unit over there, your children. The other child over there is needy, your baby over here is needy, your other baby's needy. I've got 4 kids, so I totally get it. Like, you're suspending your needs all the time because I'm running around like a chicken with its head cut off, taking care of kid number 1 and then kid number 2 and then kid number 3. It's exhausting. And there's no real off switch for it because you have to make sure they're taken care of. But we don't live in caves anymore, and there are not wild saber-toothed tigers outside our front doors that are just waiting for their opportunity to seize one of our kids and eat them alive. We don't live in a constant state of crisis, and so our need to suspend our own survival and well-being constantly, just because we have that response, that doesn't make it healthy. And so, yes, I have this very bad habit of taking care of the kids, and then, oh my God, I haven't eaten anything. And then when I sit down to eat, they need something else, and they're like, Mom, 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 Mom. And it's like, I'm going to die here. I'm just going to die. It is not going to kill your kids if you take 15 minutes and walk away and sit down somewhere quiet and eat your food. And demand the right to sit quietly and eat your food. Like, you have to feed yourself. You're a human being. I do think, and this is just my own opinion, that because women are so geared toward the care and, survival of offspring, they do have that tendency to just put themselves on the back burner. I think that we're socialized to do it, because I know I was definitely socialized to do this. And if you take it to too extreme of a degree, which is very easy to do, it's unhealthy. There are mothers out there in the world who resent their kids, and then they feel horribly guilty because they resent their kids. There have been times in my life, especially since I got a full-time job and I was trying to do a full-time job on top of taking care of my kids, it was like I resented my children. It's like, I just want some time to myself. That's all I want. I just want to sit quietly and make a YouTube video because I need to be doing that. And instead I'm taking care of these kids because they need me all the time. It's exhausting. It's very natural to struggle with that. You need to have, as with all things in your life, you need to have a little bit of balance. And so you need to be able to occasionally assert your own needs and say, you know what, I need to take care of myself too. Which is where we got this weird fad of me time in the mom world, which I don't need to go to a spa and I don't need to get my nails done. I just need to sit quietly for 15 minutes so that I can actually enjoy my food when I eat it. One of these things is important and necessary. The other one, at least for me, is not. But yeah, a woman should be able to make sure that her own needs are being met. And to identify those needs, which is something that I struggle with. There's been so many times in my life where it's like, I need oxygen, I need to breathe, I need to be safe. Safety is a basic human need. I wasn't getting it growing up, so now that I'm an adult, it's like, well, I need something, but I don't know what it is, and I don't feel comfortable looking inside myself to identify what my needs are. It's unhealthy. It's pathological. I know it. I know it's bad. I'm working on it. I'm going to therapy. I'm going to get better. Good risk management requires us to make sure problems aren't festering in the background. Sometimes we have to pry beneath the surface. Besides, good relationships hinge on each partner giving more than they take. If a bit of curiosity and deference can improve the quality of her life, and therefore our own, we'd be fools not to offer it. It makes a good point. Because women tend to be not great at assertiveness, any little teeny bit of assertiveness your partner, kind of shows, you should kind of key in on that and be aware of it. Women suck at assertiveness, as a general rule. Not all women. Obviously, there's some women who are super, super, super assertive and maybe a little bit bullying. But as a general rule, women aren't good at it. And that's another reason that I'm bad at assertiveness. I'm being a woman, as a woman, I hate to do that, but it's true. As a woman, I notice that I'm afraid to be assertive a lot of the time because I'm afraid that being assertive, I won't do it right. I'll just come off as aggressive because I'm not well practiced at it. I don't know how to handle it. And so I kind of just don't do it well. And so there have been occasions in my relationship with my husband where I'll bring an issue to his attention, and the first couple times I bring it to his attention is like, hey, there's an issue kind of over here-ish, and nothing gets done because he doesn't really even notice that I'm trying to bring attention to an issue. And so then I'll try it again. Hey, there's an issue over there. We should. Nothing gets done. Nothing gets better. And then at some point, I finally decide I need to be assertive about this. So I go to him and it's like, there's an issue right over there. It doesn't work out so well because it automatically triggers a fight. It puts him on the defensive. It's like, okay, she's really angry about this thing. It's like, well, I've been telling you for the last 8 months that there was an issue, and now we're finally having a discussion about it. Only it's more of a fight than a discussion because I suck at being assertive. How to train your partner. Here's a dirty little secret about couples, though I don't know why it isn't acknowledged openly. We train each other, much like we train our kids, our employees, and our dogs. We reinforce the behaviors we like and discourage those we dislike. Sometimes we train each other very poorly, like when a man discourages assertiveness in his partner. This is interesting because I remember when I was reading it, it's been a long time since I've read it and I've forgotten most of it, so, the mystery method. That's what it was. When I read the mystery method, he was talking about training women, and you kind of train them like a dog, and everybody got really, really offended. The truth is, any human being you interact with, in the process of interacting with them, you are teaching them through that interaction how you personally prefer to be interacted with. So instead of looking at it as training another person like a dog, because a lot of people think that that's insulting and alarming and bad, it might be easier to look at it as, I'm interacting with you right now, and when I interact with you, you interact back with me and tell me what kind of interaction you want to have from me. So when I, for example, and this is something I'm really nervous about because I've had a lot of rejection in my life, particularly at a young age, and so I'm very, very cautious about it, about rejection. And so I'm always watching people very closely, like, what can I do to make them as comfortable around me as I possibly can so that they're going to continue interacting with me. All people are like that. I'm a little hyper aware of it because I'm, nervous and socially anxious. And so when I interacted with my husband when I first met him, as I was mentioning, we were best friends for like a month, and then we wanted to get married. I interacted with him. He seemed to be enjoying my interaction. He was giving me feedback that taught me, like a dog, and I was doing the same thing with him, I like interacting with you. I would like more of this. And so that taught me that I can interact with him more, and he can handle more of being around me. Some people, you interact with them a little bit, and then it's like, okay, this is too much for me. You're going to have to tone it down a little bit. And I've had those interactions with people too, where I'm a little bit manic and I show that kind of manic side of myself and they're like, whoa, let's just kind of slow it down a bit here. It's feedback that I'm very keyed into because I understand I can be a lot to deal with. But all humans interact that way with other humans. You are constantly in this state of giving people feedback and then receiving feedback from them. I like you. I want to be around you. I want more of what you're showing me. And everything that you've given me is very positive for me. So I want to interact with you more the way that I have been. Versus, I like you, but I don't necessarily like this part of our interaction. I think we should probably dial that back a little bit. And it's very important to have that kind of back and forth between people because like maybe somebody's being really rude to you and you don't like that they're being rude to you. So you kind of start pushing them away like, hey, dude, personal space. You need to get the hell away from me if you're going to be doing that. We train other people. And so this section is called How to Train Your Partner because you do. You train your partner. Here's a common bit of poorly conceived training I see women giving their men. She wants him to be more open about his thoughts and feelings, but she shuts him down when he finally takes a chance and expresses himself by telling him he shouldn't feel that way or by scolding him for not speaking up sooner. I don't know if I've done that or not. I can't remember. My husband and I have always been really open with our communication. Like we share a lot of information with each other. And so I've never felt the need to be like, you should tell me how you feel. How do you feel? What are your feelings? I'm not a feelings oriented person either, so that probably helps. And I tend to have a very masculine way of approaching feelings and emotions, which makes it really easy for me to communicate with him. So it's great, but I mean, women do that. They're like, what are you feeling? What are your feelings right now? I know a woman. She's in my writers group because I write novels and I'm part of this group of novelists, and I've seen her on a few occasions. Every time I see her, the feedback she gives me on my writing is, what is your character feeling right now? What are their feelings? It's a very feminine attitude to have. She's a very feminine woman, and I am not always as feminine of a woman as I perhaps should be. So when she gives me this, what are your characters feeling right now? I just look at it and it's like, their feelings are not important in this part of the novel, or necessarily at all. I don't care about what my characters are feeling, and I don't want my reader to care about what my characters are feeling. I want my reader to care about the action that's happening inside the novel, because I want it to be exciting, and I want it to be action-oriented, and I want it to be full of things happening. I don't necessarily want to spend time feeling and experiencing the emotional roller coaster that comes with this thing that's happening. The emotional roller coaster should be pretty obvious from the things that are happening as they're going on. We have very different approaches to novel writing, and she's very feminine. I'm very not feminine. And so, it's very interesting. I appreciate her feedback in the sense that it's so deeply opposite to my own that it gives me a very different perspective on my own writing. But women are like that. It's like, feelings. Okay. But it's one of those things. You try to... It's bad training with your partner if you say, I want this from you. I want this from you. I want this from you. And they finally give it to you and you go, dude, what on earth are you doing? People do that. People do that. It's bad training for partners. The ideals in this chapter, reliability, inquisitiveness, and assertiveness, are targets to shoot for. Don't expect perfection, but don't settle for lack of effort. Clarity takes practice. For better or worse, couples practice on each other. Don't let it be a dirty little secret that you're training one another each and every day. And that's another way to look at it. Because couples spend a lot of time interacting with each other, socializing with one another, talking to each other, when it comes to being a good communicator, not just a good talker, not just good linguistically, but a good communicator with another person, the person you're practicing with the most in improving and honing that skill set is going to be your romantic partner, your spouse, your long-term partner. You get better as you do it with that other person. And so it's almost good to look at it as, instead of training as like a dog, even though that is what you're doing, you're also teaching that other person. You're also giving them feedback that is absolutely deeply valuable to them on how to communicate with another person and how to maintain and uphold a relationship. Even if your relationship ends in, sudden death or divorce, even if it ends, the skills that they learn from you, they're going to be taking into the next relationship. If you find that you're really struggling with clarity, be smart and ask her to go to couples therapy with you. It's just good risk management to invest a bit of time and money at the front end of a problem rather than allowing it to fester and exact a higher price down the road. Besides, most relationship issues boil down to some fairly common problems that are easily fixed. Why reinvent the wheel? And this is because he talks about how couples have a tendency to get into the same arguments again and again and again and again. If you haven't resolved it by the 6th time you fought about it, what makes you think you're going to resolve it by the 48th time you fought about it? It's good to, if you have a problem that just doesn't seem to be getting better, if you tend to get into the same kinds of arguments again and again and again, sometimes it's useful to just go to a professional, talk to a professional. My husband and I are doing couples therapy right now, and it's been really good for us because we're good at communicating with each other, but we went through a really rough 5 to 7 years where he had a brain tumor and it altered his personality. And so now, we're trying to rebuild and strengthen our relationship and reinforce it. Couples counseling is really good for reinforcing and strengthening a relationship. So if you value a relationship that you're in and you want it to grow and flourish, don't think that couples counseling is some sort of sign that your relationship is failing. It's just strengthening and building. It's not always a bad thing. Especially if you have a problem and you look at it and say, it's better to look at a problem, say, hey, I think this is a problem. Let's just take it in and see if we can't get it fixed. You do that for your sore throat. You've had it for too long. Why do I have a sore throat? It's been too long. I'm going to go to the doctor and just make sure it's nothing serious. Or your car. Hey, it's making a weird noise. I'm going to get it in and get it checked before the car breaks down somewhere in the middle of the highway. People benefit from occasionally seeking an expert opinion. It's not a bad thing. So, yeah. So that's the end of the chapter. The next chapter is going to be another of the bright triad traits. This one is maturity. I can't wait to see what this is. And hopefully I will be making new videos far more regularly because I'm not working full time anymore and I'm so happy. I loved my job. I loved my job. I did. And then I switched shifts and I was doing something that wasn't as fun and exciting, but it was still earning money, which was necessary. And then finally it was like, you know what, I'm tired of this. I do miss my job. Like I saw my coworkers yesterday. Like I went out and I brought them a tray of Christmas cookies because I missed them. And I'm sitting there and I'm looking at them and it's like, I really miss you guys. I miss my job. I miss work. And at the same time, I only have one lifetime and I have way too much stuff to do. And I don't have time. I don't have time to do that job anymore. It's just not enough of a priority compared to all the other life stuff that I need to get done, which could be a very feminine way of looking at the world. I do understand because it's like, well, somebody's got to earn the money. It's important. And at the same time, if I can start hopefully doing all these side projects that I've got, they will generate income at some point. And maybe eventually I will be earning money. I don't know. So that's it. I can't wait to make another video and I'm excited about it. And I'll talk to you guys later.